record this so we have it. Welcome everybody to another live chat, live Q&A with Karen and Piers and myself, KP and Associates. We actually have a very interesting special guest today. Paul Sharman is the Councillor Paul Sharman, I should say, has been representing Burlington's Ward 5 since 2010. It's quite the run, Paul. I love it. Now in your third term, known for fourth term. Oh my gosh. Well, your website is wrong then. Just saying.
Okay, I'll fix that. Thank you.
Known for your dedication. I love this part. You're known for your dedication to the community, and I can attest to that because I've been around in this. I've lived in your Ward 5 for most of that time. You've championed initiatives like the net carbon neutrality by 2041, local park upgrades, and flood relief efforts with a background as a chartered management accountant and years of leadership experience. He brings I'm just reading here. He brings a thoughtful, strategic approach to his work. You're a proud grandfather? Gosh, I wouldn't have thought. Paul Sharman, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's a delight to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And as you can imagine, I'm shy and quiet, and I'm I'll not want to talk to you at all.
I'll start if you don't mind. I'll ask a really hard-hitting bang question. There's a lot of interesting political times out there happening at the moment with a lot of different things floating around. What do you feel are the key issues currently facing our city in general?
This is one of those moments in one of the many moments I've thought throughout my 50 years living in Canada now that I'm delighted to be a Canadian.
That's true. It's true.
For all the things that we are, we do like to be in a good place, and we do like to care for each other. And that's always a good starting point for recognizing that we have challenging times like everybody does. We have a rather special environment here in Burlington as being one of the best places to live in the world. And that's all good. But that said, we're not without our challenges. And, the biggest one that's coming at us is that we are built out. We have no greenfield land, and yet we've been allocated 70,000 more population to move here. Plus, in addition to that, some land was converted, about another 700 acres by the province, which means we could have as many as 120,000 people moving here in the next 30 years. So we've gone from the slowest moving, growing municipality to now having more. We won't be the fastest growing, but we're certainly going to be one of the more dense municipalities in the GTHA, not compared to Toronto, of course. So that, I think, is the number one biggest thing. But the other thing is that we're not equipped to handle that growth at all. All the planning regime in Ontario is based around greenfield development. They're not around infill, particularly. And so our planning regime is just not suitable for what has to happen in Burlington. Right now, our planning regime is developed around infill in the downtown core, that sort of thing. And basically, when you start adding another 70,000 people within the same urban boundary, that planning regime will lead to us just allowing builders to build storage units to humans. There will not be any quality of life in any of that. Right? Because for us to get something like a recreation center, we have to buy an old school.
Right.
That's because we got lucky. So there's that. There's the issue is that we've got to think about the community and who's going to be living here in 30 years' time. But right now, 100,000 people in Halton will never own a home in Halton. Right? So what is the nature of the building we want? We're not planning that way. No, well, thinking that way. We're kind of working on it. And, one of my roles is deputy mayor of strategy, budget, process, and performance. And I keep harping on, could you please change your planning horizon to 30 years out? Right? Because whenever we survey existing residents, 30% of whom are over the age of 65, what do you want? And they all go, well, I want a single family home. Well, good. So you get $1 million for a piece of land without a building on it, and add a building, you're looking at $1.5–2 million for the basic home nowadays, right?
And let's also not forget the idea that current residents that are sitting here in their detached homes don't want a bunch of apartments suddenly around them, kind of filling in the space. It's a kind of a difficult juxtaposition to kind of add more people, but and try to find more space, but also keep people happy that are already here and trying to, because I just from being on social media for as long as I have been, the sentiment in the local groups is that there's a lot of infill happening and it's changing the landscape of a city that Karen's my mom, Paul, by the way, in case you didn't know that. Karen and I have been in the city for 45 years. And I don't know if Karen was here a little bit before that, but not in Burlington, I don't think. And it used to be this cute little bedroom, cozy community. And it's become this bustling hubbub of stuff going on and traffic and all the things, right?
Well, that leads us then to the next issue, which is, okay, so because of land shortage, amenities are a problem. We increase the population. What are we going to do for things like, arenas? Okay, I'm lucky enough in Ward 5 to have Skyway Arena being rebuilt. Beautiful site opening up in the course of this year. Robert Bateman High School, which is now turning into a recreation center. But those are few and far between. And that's just to get us up to date with our population today. So add another 120,000 people. How on earth do we do that unless we are actively planning that and thinking about the land layout? So there's that. But the third one is road congestion, because the Ontario government doesn't recognize that we live beside a lake that ends right here.
You can't have more roads out there.
Oh, guess what? There's a bend. And guess what? You're going to put already we've got, probably 1.5 million people living around us. And that's going to double in the next 30 years. And already the traffic is insane. Right? So you add Milton, watered down. Everybody wants to come to our GO station, especially like Appleby and the highway. And then they want to get there, and then they want to go home later. And by the way, the QEW is like an open sewer. You know what happens with an open sewer? When it gets jammed up, it goes everywhere. Right? And that's most days of the week. So that's awful. So we need a solution to congestion. I think we need a tunnel under the bay, and they need to straighten out the highway intersection that occurs at Brant Street. And then, on top of that, we've one of the lowest property tax regimes in the area, such that we have undertaxed property tax for 30 years. And now we're having to pay the price of that, right? We had our IT systems were dated 1990. We are now replacing systems that are 30 years old, right? And people wonder why taxes are going up. And, we went through 8 years where we had a 0% tax increase from 1990 to 1997. All we had to do was 1% a year, and we'd have $150 million in the bank today. Right? We would be a different situation. You don't have to go far. Oakville, Waterdown, Hamilton, and they're 30% more costly than we are. That's crazy.
Interesting. How do you prioritize the needs of those different things for different neighborhoods and communities and things like that?
Right. So that's it. Clearly, there are factors like flood resilience.
Right. So that's a good one for us, especially. Yeah.
Right. So everything south of the QEW that was built prior to 1970 has got weeping tiles and has got gutter downspouts going into the weeping tile, which goes into the sanitary sewer. So that means on a strong, raining, heavy day, you're getting 2,000 liters an hour going into the sanitary sewer. And then people go, "What's wrong with your sewers? They're overloaded." Well, that's why. So all that requires people to cut the downspouts. So certainly flood resilience by ward, to answer your question, south of the QEW requires attention. So we went through that in 2014. Between the region and the city, we spent $100 million to remediate, but we didn't expect the kind of rainfall we got in July this year. So now we have to go through that all over again. So it could be another $100 million. I don't know. But in addition to that, road infrastructure, we have an indexing system for every infrastructure in the city, roads, buildings, everything. And so that by ward is all taken care of by mathematics, by the condition of the road. So that's good. Parks maintenance, basically much the same thing. We look after all the parks we've got, irrespective of which ward you're in. You're going to get a schedule for it. But when it comes to recreation facilities, then that's managed by the city with respect to the needs of the community at large. Again, not a community thing, a specific community. So it just happens that Robert Bateman, the Skyway Arena in Ward 5, what can I say? And the Orchard Community Hub, which, by the way, I really drove through. So you can make things happen at that level, but your council becomes your seriously important representative. And then after that, the councillor office is really critical to almost everything that's going on.
What role does the community engagement play in that decision-making process as well?
Well, for everything we do, by law, we are required to engage community members. So if we have a planning application, we are required to involve client engagement at the statutory public meeting, and then through our community meetings, and then council meeting. But what we also do is we hold a community meeting before the official process starts, and we gather the concerns from the people right from the very beginning. So recently there was a downtown property talking about neighbors not being happy, where they basically have a new building that they live in, and there was always an empty space next to it that was going to be built on. And the new people, the people living in the old existing building, don't want the new building to be too high because of shadows and because things like that. But it got stopped because of flooding issues, and so they had their issues, and they had to be concerned about flooding. So it's influential. It's not definitive, and we always try to be sensitive to the community members. But things like that. We also go through something called Get Involved Burlington, and we always are sensing the community about pretty much everything. So any park, any so Lakeside Plaza, Skyway Arena, and Bateman, and almost anything you'd imagine, transit, we are putting out on our website called Get Involved Burlington, and we are asking for people's opinion. And then we get petitions. You want to see petitions? Then we have fun with that. So there's a fair amount of engagement that can be influential, some more so than others, less so when there are regulations that are set by the province.
Right. Do you have something that you are most proud of at the moment that you've done in your tenure here in Burlington?
Oh, in the 10 years I've been here.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Well, my simple perspective on the world is I've never had an ambition other than to make a contribution. So in terms of doing things that I think are important are things that the community wants. So clearly, I'm very pleased with the Skyway Arena being redeveloped and it being LEED Gold, and we have walking tracks in there and now pickleball courts in there. The same thing with Bateman. Really proud. And I committed to both those things happening, and they have. But really, things like the oh my goodness, the Appleby Line Street Festival.
Right.
I'm proud of it simply because it took a lot of determination, and we initiated it because we wanted to make a statement about not having cars on roads, and morphed it into a great team of people that now, I feel like I'm a hanger-on, and I'm getting credit for it still. But here we are. We just done our 13th year, and we had with the biggest year ever, 8,000 people. I'm all about community building, so I'm proud of that. And there's one thing I have to add. About 8 years ago, I worked with Rick Goldring, the mayor at the time, to visit in the United States something called Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, and we brought it back into Burlington, and I've driven it ever since. And we have a fully successful pilot project, 410 John Street, of what was PACE-inspired Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. It's called the Community Wellness Hub. Through my relationship with the region, we now have 5 community wellness hubs in the region of Halton, 2 in Hamilton, and we are going to scale it up across the province. And my goal is 1 million person capacity across the country in the next 10 years. Those things excite me, and I'm proud of it.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
That is amazing. That is tremendous. Tremendous.
You seem to also have a like sort of an excitement about sustainability and environmental initiatives as well. That seems to be a theme that I get a lot from you when I see your history. Talk to me a little bit about what you've been doing with relation to some of that stuff.
Well, you mentioned my grandchildren, and yes, between Janet and I, we have 8, And
Goodness.
the oldest is 17, and we got a couple of 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds, and so I think about my life and my parents' lives. We had it good. Land was cheap, labor was cheap, and construction was cheap, materials were cheap. So we could buy a house that was, which was, what we would now think is huge. And you could get it for very little money. But today you can't. And so we think about our children and what we're looking into, and it's influenced by climate. Gosh, I don't get snow very much in Southeast Burlington.
Yeah.
My snowblower parked there, hopefully, but I don't know why. And then just think about all of the changes that are occurring. So I'm anxious about climate change. That's why I talk about congestion, because the source of carbon greenhouse gases, the greatest source of greenhouse gases in Burlington is cars on the highway.
Huge.
Right? It's just not good. I'm pleased about Metrolinx and electric railroad lines. I think that's helpful, but it doesn't solve the problem, because the population is going to double in the next 20 years, 30 years. And so transits, it may take a bite out of it, but still essentially we're going to have twice as many cars. So what we're doing is back in 2015, in our strategic plan, we said the city and municipality, the municipality operation, the organization, will be net carbon neutral by 2041. And we are taking all sorts of steps to make our the consumption of energy reduce in our buildings. So Skyway Arena has no natural gas hooked up to it. There is none. LEED gold status, and that's where we're going to go with all our buildings. Bateman will get there eventually, but it needs another $10-15 million. And that's our goal. So we're doing that. We created something called the Bay Area Climate Change Council with Mohawk and Hamilton and ourselves, and we are now onto these things. Research going on, and we have our own community group that looks after and gives us reports all the time about what we're doing. Finally, we have a $10,000 program where we will provide $10,000 interest-free to homeowners to upgrade their insulation and put in heat pumps and those sort of things.
Wow.
So lots of things.
Yeah.
So
that's
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Go ahead.
So Paul, you mentioned the congestion, which is obviously a huge concern, and the carbon generated through that congestion. I'm kind of just curious, because it seems to me like I follow a little bit of like urbanism online and stuff like that. And so it seems to me there's always sort of two camps. It's the more roads, more lanes will reduce congestion versus provide alternatives to try and get people not to drive. I'm kind of curious where like our municipal government is, because we kind of know where the provincial government stands on this at the moment, but where does our municipal government stand on that kind of thing? Hopefully that's a controversial question, but
it's a highly controversial question, and I'm about to be inappropriate.
Yeah.
Don't answer it then.
Yeah.
You need
I'm not
to know
trying
the
to trip
truth.
anybody up. I'm just curious.
No comment, Paul.
No, you need to know the truth. The truth is that we are just following the lines of the province, and the province has been sponsoring increase in modal split for decades, to the point that we even had consultants that said, okay, well, your region has declared that we will have 12% modal split in 20 years. And so therefore, or 5 years. So therefore we're going to make a transit system that will accomplish that. Well, give me a break. Those seats on the buses are empty 90% of the time.
You're right.
And so we live in a community that has cars, wants cars, loves cars, has money, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't want the inconvenience. So, because we're hidebound with our big buses, and, we should have on-demand buses to let people get on where they want to get on, go to where they want to get off without having to take an hour to get from A to B, right? Yeah. So how do you possibly get, even if you get to 12% modal split, how do you make a significant reduction in vehicle traffic when you're going to double the population?
Well, sorry, can I can I add a little thing here? Is that the GO train is absolutely amazing. And I
Yes.
don't think that they advertise or push that enough for people to take, because the cost is, they've lowered the cost dramatically. And so the cost is so much so that the average person driving into Toronto or using this QEW and is wasting their money, and they could be taking that GO train
And
because
time.
it's
But I
efficient.
also think the bus cost in Burlington is relatively cheap. Like I don't find it to be inexpensive or overly expensive, but you're right. It's empty most of the time, especially at this time of year when it's nighttime and you're driving by and the lights are on in the bus and there's 4 people in the entire bus. Seems a bit wasteful in a way.
Well, I'm an
They're
accountant, I
not-
like
are they
data.
not, are they not electric now? Are they?
We're going to get some hybrid buses. The problem is that if you get fully electric buses, you're going to be able to charge them up rapidly.
Yeah.
Mm.
But if you think about all of that, I agree with you, Karen. I love I love GO trains. I love the fact that they're going to be going more frequently and faster,
Mhm.
east-west.
Yep.
But most people do not work downtown.
Mm.
They are going on that highway, but they mostly, because we live along the edge of a lake, they are not going south
Mm.
of the tracks, but they're going north of the tracks. So if you have a job anywhere through the GTHA that's not precisely downtown,
Mhm.
you are
You
getting
have
in
to
a
take your
car.
car. Yeah. Have you done studies on that?
Well, the one thing I do know is that at least 25% of the traffic on our roads comes off the highway to cut through the city of
Mhm.
Burlington.
Mhm.
Right? When you think about what I've just said, 25% of all the traffic on our roads doesn't sound like much, only a quarter, until you realize it only happens during peak hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's about 10% of our day, which means that the number of vehicles coming off that highway represent 2.5 times as much traffic than the rest of the time. So our roads are not full. And the people who catch local transit are not commuting through our roads. The people who are using our transit are local people.
Mhm.
They're not cutting through.
Mm.
So we have not understood the traffic, to answer your question. I don't think we made an adequate attempt to understand the traffic. And then we got the region and the city, and we got transportation up at the region and transportation at the city. And guess what? They have different considerations.
Well,
Mm.
so let me just think about what I was going to say here, because I want to make sure I'm clear. So first of all, over the many years that I've done real estate, I have understood and I've watched the growth, and I've understood that they build first and then they do the demographic study. Is that true in regard to the city? Because I have to tell you that when they build, all of a sudden there's a lot more traffic, and then they start looking at all the needs of the people, and they build the plazas and they do whatever they have to do, right?
It's there were in the planning of the past. It was always with an understanding of what the urban boundary was.
Yeah.
And what the nature of the community was going to be. We had very few plans for tall buildings, right? Until the last 10 years or 15 years. Up until then, low rise. We had the Ontario Milton Halton Hills Real Estate Association had Nick Nanos do a survey. You may remember that.
Yeah.
And the conclusion was that 71% of all the people that were surveyed said they live in a single family home and they aspire to live in a single family home. Right? Well, like that's Nirvana. But the fact of the matter is nobody can afford that except the people who bought them 35 years ago.
Yeah.
So what was is no longer.
So what you have in Milton now, because I lived on Britannia Road for 14 years, and what happened is I moved in 2004, and by the time I moved out, the traffic on Britannia coming home, and in the height of the in the height of the rush hour, coming home was incredible. Going out and coming home, you would have traffic going down to the highway, right? And so that's what's happening now, is that traffic is unfortunately affecting the farmlands and the people that live in so they thought was a very serene, comfortable area, quiet area. It's no longer quiet anymore. The
And
traffic.
it's going to get worse, Karen. It's going to get worse.
So how do you resolve that? How do you resolve that movement from the QEW up to Milton? Because that's what they're doing. They're not going to the 401. They're they're going into that Milton area, which, by the way, it's cheaper housing for them than Burlington. So they're going to buy up there more so than they're going to buy down here. So how do you resolve that? How do you resolve that traffic situation?
So the province is going to put a new highway in. So it's going through, it's north of the QE of the 401. There's that. I think they intend to put trains, improve the train system going up through Milton. I don't think though that they have reached a level of understanding of what increasing the population by, the number of houses by, population by 1.5 million new homes in Ontario. I don't think they've understood what that means in terms of transportation. It means chaos here.
It is, and they're also not like Burlington as a whole. When you think about the idea of the green land and the green space areas and things like that, I understand the concept of keeping our natural areas more naturalized, but without expanding, where else could they possibly build without doing, Oakville and Milton touch each other now, and they had to come to some agreement to bring that together. And Burlington has been, for all accounts, actually much more stickler about, with the Niagara Escarpment Commission, about keeping the green space above Dundas green space, which in a way has been great. But yeah, it's just you're adding more traffic to an already trafficked situation. And let's not forget that every time there's a car accident, our geographic location at the corner of the lake like that creates a situation where everybody gets off the highway into the city and makes it even worse at rush hour.
It's fine.
So this seems to be the hot button that everybody's talking about. I guess this has come up for us here too. So we're coming up on 30 minutes.
And it's funny because sorry, Justin.
Go ahead. One last thing.
Funny because, we get clients who say to us, we want to move into a quiet area. Okay. Yeah. So, Paul, you try and get a quiet area without traffic noise in Burlington now.
South of New Street is good.
Not terrible. The funny thing I always tell people, my superpower as a realtor is being able to avoid all the traffic because I know all the streets.
Well, I'd like you to give me some of your superpowers.
Yeah. I got one last quick question for you that we can end on. It's a nice little softball for you. What advice could we give to citizens who genuinely want to get more involved in the local government?
Really? So there are certainly things that they can follow. Get involved, join the Get Involved Burlington site. You just literally go on the website, type in Get Involved. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, but sign up for my newsletter. Just send an email to me, paul.sharman@burlington.ca, and I will put you on our mailing list. And of course, if anybody ever wants anything, just send me an email.
Oh, super.
Beautiful. We'll put those links of all that stuff below in the comments as we go through and we get this stuff out there.
Thank you,
Paul. I appreciate you coming on. We've
Wonderful.
been a really fun chat, actually. It was
a lot of fun. We'll do this again whenever you like.
All right.
Plug me in, I blow hot air.
All right. Awesome, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye.